Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Permissionless podcast. Of course, as always, brought to you by the team at Guardian. And as always, we're going deep with DeFi builders and founders building in the Web3 space, building products that are pushing the limits of what we're able to accomplish with the technical stack, with the UX, and really breaking down the barriers of what is holding DeFi back at this moment. And today we have a wonderful conversation with Brian and John from Glider. Glider is building, really, in my opinion, a complete 10x improvement in UX for DeFi users who want to actually have programmable smart money instead of what really seems like today for a lot of instances, manual money. In the fact that there's a lot of active management today, and Glider, I think, addresses this in a really sharp way in that everything from their UX to, just the fundamental idea of having an API that is able to automate all of these interactions and create these strategies that automatically execute like programmable money should. I think it's, in general, a good product idea, and I think the execution is being made very thoughtfully. So, of course, we got to pick Brian and John's brain about how they're approaching this problem and how they're developing. And really an interesting point that I wanted to ask them on is how do they get the feedback for the UX and how do they approach it from that side? But even more interestingly, outside of everything at Glider, we got to get into how they got into DeFi initially and really from all of their experience, where they see DeFi going and what they see being as some of the hardest bottlenecks for builders to overcome in the space and the biggest opportunities that lie around the corner. So today we have really an exceptional conversation with both of these two from Glider. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. But of course, before we dive in, my name is Owen, and over 3.5 years ago, I founded Guardian on the premise that we would need to house trillions of dollars on-chain securely. And in order to ship in that environment, that we would need a 10x increase in the level of confidence that we're able to have when we ship in that environment. And I'm happy to say that today we have achieved that level of standard for security necessary with Guardian. At Guardian, we use not one, but two competing audit teams accompanied by a world-renowned lead security researcher and a full-time fuzzing engineer to fuzz every edge case, even the most nuanced one that really cannot be found manually. And with all of these things packaged together in our audit methodology, we're able to gain so much confidence that we actually put up our own funds as a bounty in a public contest for the scope after our review. And we do this really to, first of all, obviously show the confidence that we have in our model, but also the effectiveness of our audit methodology. And so really at this point, it's just up to DeFi to catch up. And so now, of course, without further ado, let us get into this wonderful conversation with Brian and John from Glider. Well, first of all, guys, appreciate you so much for taking the time to hop on. I think, there's so much that we could get into today, but to be honest, I think the best place to start is just like Brian and John, how did you guys find your way into DeFi in the first place? What was that? What was your user onboarding experience? And what were the reasons that you guys came into the space? And then we can discuss from there.
Yeah, I'll kick it off here. So back in 2015, actually, was the first time I touched Bitcoin. I was at MIT at the time studying, and they gave, in a kind of a semi-famous experiment at this point, they gave everybody a third of a Bitcoin.
There's tuition.
At the time, it was $100. So
Yeah.
even, they have got 5,000 students. I guess they gave out, 5,000 students times 100 number of dollars. Let me do that math in my head. And this was such a weird time. So first of all, they told us to create accounts on Circle. And this is when Circle was your wallet. And it was what are we doing here? And the purpose of the experiment was to really see how are people going to spend or use digital currency? And it was so ahead of its time, right? What were you going to do with $100 of Bitcoin in 2015? You can't even go to the grocery store today and spend your Bitcoin, right? It was never going to, and in fact, I'm really curious what they learned from that experiment. But so that was the first time I touched crypto 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about. A lot has changed. After that, I was an early user of Coinbase, and they had an exchange called GDAX, which was their predecessor to Coinbase Pro. It was free to trade. Like, imagine if Coinbase was free to trade these days. Like, it would just be a totally different game. And yeah, no, I was participating in DeFi Summer. I got a lot into NFTs. I helped some art collectors in New York do things with NFTs, and we spent way too much money on NFTs. And then I
That's one
worked
of
at a
those.
firm called Anchorage as well. And so
Yeah.
we could touch on all of that, but John has his own interesting story to tell here as well.
Very based of MIT.
I think some of it probably made it onto the dark web, if I had to guess, with college students.
Oh, for sure, without a doubt, without a doubt.
Fake IDs. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, on my end, I had always been messing around with Bitcoin and just some early, cryptocurrencies. Early on, I think where it really kicked off for me in a real way though was one of my colleagues during college was involved in the Ethereum ICO and just like the Ethereum core development. And he kind of pulled me along and he's like, hey, you should check this stuff out. It's actually programmable now. It's not just like sending tokens back and forth. I always thought that was interesting though. Like I could permissionlessly send you money and vice versa. But for me, I was working in fintech, moving money around in databases, notcha files, like ACH clearings, you name it. And so like I saw the messiness of how money currently moves. And then, I think my first onboarding was actually the Mist browser. That was probably like a good while ago. I feel like a lot of people wouldn't even know what that is, but like a long time ago, Ethereum built in, they tried to build a browser with a built-in wallet and all that
Yep.
good stuff. So I guess from there, I just got enamored with programmable money. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I looked for like early Ethereum protocols. Back then there were like 5 or 6, right? Of just like what you could do in DeFi before DeFi was even a term. And 0x had just ICO'd. It was just like really early times. It was like Maker, 0x, Augur,
Yeah.
handful of others. And I built one of the first 0x relayers on top of 0x protocol because I was just like, wow, the transfer and settlement of value is going to explode. Just like it's equitable. If you have a laptop and an internet connection, you can participate in this economy, this new thing. And so as an engineer, I was engaged really early on, just building stuff on top of whatever I could find that I found interesting. And so built on top of 0x, a relayer at the time. And then I got basically invited to join the team. And so joined 0x early on and focused on like DeFi, swap, settlement. Later on, we built one of the first DEX aggregators, like 0x API. Then I and a few other colleagues went and built Matcha out, which is a consumer-facing DEX aggregator kind of product. And so there I learned a lot about just users. Like we did some of the first like real DeFi user studies, for example. And we just would go to whales, retail, you name it, and just like study how they interacted with things. And yeah, just like early on, I love DeFi. So like the settlement of value, the exchange of value to me is so interesting. And so yeah, I just spent most of my career doing that. So I worked at 0x, built a few products there. I started a product studio after that with a colleague at 0x, working on really whatever VCs would call us up and say, hey, we have projects for you, founders, you name it. And just like from there, we built a lot of consumer-facing products in DeFi. Then I joined Anagram later on. Anagram's kind of like this VC slash kind of investment company, and we also they also build a good bit of products as well. And so kind of helped kind of steer that. And then more lately, I kind of teamed up with Brian to build out Matcha or Glider rather. Sorry, that was a while ago. But yeah, that's like the broad overview. But yeah, just every day I wake up and I'm just like still love DeFi. It hasn't gotten old for me. So it's
yeah, and I mean this was too like John. This was an era where 0x had to explain what a DEX is, right? Like there weren't.
Oh, people, we would have to write what is WETH explainers, like DYDX, all of these companies way back when. DYDX was built on 0x once upon a time. Dharma, awesome wallet at the time. Like we would have to go and explain what a swap is, why you have to wrap your ETH, because at that time, even like Uniswap had like just one pairing of token type, right? And so like it was very primitive. And nowadays, we built up a lot of that But even like EIP 712, like basic signatures weren't available until like you built these standards and just like, yeah, very early days. So it's been fun to see that whole arc of kind of DeFi.
Yeah, and I think, John, you're in an interesting place because you've been on a lot of the consumer side of crypto. Like, how do we bring this to people who, once again, they don't even know what WETH is? And like, I think something you'll notice, which is like common in, I mean, both Brian and John, why you guys said you initially got on, the same reason I got interested in DeFi and Brennan as well was, I mean, really just curiosity and like thinking like, oh, I mean, this is really cool and being excited about, I think probably the opportunity that you, I mean, it takes like folks who can think like, okay, this can be really big and like really want to believe in it and have that positive disposition. But that was the initial, like, I don't know, maybe the massive users that Ethereum and EVM chains sort of got to. But working in the space of consumer facing and user facing, trying to get new users, what's the offer? What's the impetus that gets them to come on if it's not just like curiosity, people tinkering around? Like, how do we get people who are outside of that persona to come and actually use DeFi?
Yeah, John and I definitely have thought a long time about how do we think about expanding the pie of crypto, right?
Yep.
Rather than everybody here competing over the same couple million people who use crypto every day, like we need to get more people into the system. I do want to touch back on your curiosity point though. Like John and I have not lost the curiosity and we think that other people should continue to experiment with things. Like we play with at least, a new consumer app probably every week, at least, right? And some of these are early access because we know people who are building cool things. Some of these are just apps we've been waiting to play around with, and or maybe we're looking at a new chain and we're trying to build Glider into a new chain. What are some of the apps that are already there, and how can we interact with them? But to your question, like how do we get more people into crypto? I think the gateway these days is centralized exchanges. We know that, right? It's also the Robinhoods of the world. We're hoping that evolves over time where, we spend a lot of time trying to make our app, and, other people do this as well, try to make it feel like Web 2 so that it doesn't feel like this, scary, oh my God, what am I doing with my money type of situation. Yeah. And so I guess two things, like blending the world of Web 3 and Web 2, making it feel like Web 2, although there's Web 3 Rails and everything behind it. Polymarket does a really good job of this. Like, they don't even mention crypto on their front page.
Yeah.
And then these exchanges are really helping push this, right? So like Coinbase has their own wallet. There are now connectors to be able to move your money very quickly from the centralized exchange to their wallet. And then we're seeing a lot of improvements around just stable coins and onboarding. Like stable coins are going to be a huge gateway for people to very quickly send money to their friends in a Venmo-like fashion. But then once they have these stable coins, they realize, oh my God, I can use all these apps, dexes, whatever else that there is actually already built on crypto. And that's where I think curiosity is then more easily routed to these applications, right? You don't have this friction of like, okay, like I've got to make a MetaMask wallet. I've got to then have a Coinbase account, deposit money into Coinbase, move that money to my wallet. What is the seed phrase on all this also? Yeah. And then, oops, I forgot that, I need ETH. And so, I transferred USDC to my wallet. Now I need to get some ETH. We've all been there, right? And so we're seeing a lot of these friction points get a lot better on the wallet side. And then on the app side as well, it's just like, we're ready and we're here for it. John can expand on this for sure, though.
Yeah, I have some theories on where the kind of the next marginal user comes from and like what takes that. And, I think there's the kind of the Western US centric views and then more of like everybody else. And so like just thinking about it in terms of like the US, let's say, where does the next marginal user come from? Let's say, okay, the user pool of crypto Twitter is saturated and we need to expand, right? And like, that's why I don't try like fighting other DeFi protocols or products. To me, like everything's going to expand such an order of magnitudes more that like, to me, we should be focusing on just expanding this entire space.
Yeah.
To me, I think one, you have to do better than existing Web 2 things. Like you just have to, and that may sound hand wavy, but you can't like, George just had a great tweet the other day. Like in 2025, you can't be asking people to pay for gas in a basic consumer product. Like you have to bring certain affordances that Web 2 gives you because that's the bar. Like to me, my friends are on DraftKings and Robinhood, and that's the level of consumer affordances they expect, right? And so the way I think about it is you have to do like Web 2 plus. It's like you have to offer things that aren't available on Web 2. 24/7 trading, for example. Like to me, that's one of the big unlocks. And this is the US kind of centric kind of take is like you have to offer financial primitives that aren't available elsewhere and just things that users would want to get to that they can't. So like prediction markets is awesome because to me, there's still not a great venue there. Maybe Web 2 ends up competing there. I'm curious. Stable coins, to me, that's awesome. Perps are a wonderful invention. I think that's like, in terms of crypto innovations, like Perps is like definitely top 3 in my mind. So those are all really cool. I think, and then the non-US centric view is how are we enabling this financial system for everybody else? Because I can go on Robinhood right now and trade a stock. That's cool, but you see Leschner's kind of bringing equities on chain, like tokenizing all the things. Like that was Xerox's original model, and it still is to this day. Is just tokenize the world, right? Like to me, anyone in the world with an internet connection can participate in this financial system. It's just like that's the really big unlock. I think we get kind of blinders sometimes, and we're like in the U.S., like how are we going to compete against Robinhood? But majority of the world just doesn't have access to these capital markets in general, and so like to me. I think we'll see more influx of people, not the kind of the US, and then we'll see US kind of come in different ways. Like there's a different carrot for different kind of user demographics here.
100%. I really like what Brian said about how we need to abstract away a lot of the underlying of like, okay, you have to go get your wallet and all this stuff. But I think that expands out even further into how DeFi protocols kind of position themselves in general. Which is, it's almost like a copywriting approach, which is like, they're talking about the how, not the what. They're talking about like, okay, you can use, like we use these underlying, we use layer 0. It's like the user they don't know about a layer 0. They don't know about this, like, and they don't want to. They just want to know what, and that's why they use DraftKings is because what DraftKings offers them. They don't use DraftKings because they have XYZ backend that's on a certain AWS instance. Like I feel like since it is almost like we have this niche sort of market that's almost like an echo chamber on crypto Twitter. We think that it's like you can market your protocol by saying like, oh, we did this integration where you can reduce MEV by this amount because of XYZ protocol that we're integrating with. But it's like the end user, they don't know what any of that is, and they really don't want to. They don't have 100 hours to put into it.
This is actually really tricky for all consumer apps in crypto, and the reason being is that the value proposition for a crypto consumer app or somebody who's in crypto is you don't have to think about gas, bridging, networks, fully non-custodial. But for somebody who's not in crypto and has never done this before, that is not a value add to them, right? They don't know the pain of not having the native gas token on some random chain. And so you're trying to, and I think there's an arc here that every crypto app should really follow. It's like, one, you start with the core audience that you have, and you say, these are the problems we can solve for you. But over time, those core problems and the types of users you're trying to attract are going to change. And so we're spending more and more time trying to think about how do we not talk about all of these things that people really shouldn't care about. And think about Robinhood. Robinhood doesn't talk to you about clearing houses and custodians and stock certificates. Exactly. Nobody cares. And I think that's the era of DeFi that's existed for quite a while. And we're suddenly now, at least we're trying to move past that and into the future here.
Have you seen Stripe's new stablecoin feature? It doesn't even tell you what chain the stables are on. They'll just figure it out for you. You want to send them to ETH, Solana, whatever. You just see I have 10K of USDC. There's not even a chain identifier there right now. And so I think that's really interesting to me. It's just they abstract out all the complexities. And that's kind of where the biggest recurring lesson in my crypto career has been meet users where they're at. And anytime you try to fight that, it's really challenging. You're probably going to be wrong. You're probably going to be early. I remember looking at a lot of these Telegram bots, and I'm like, why would anyone use these things? And I had to really reevaluate a lot of first principles of just, okay, this is where they're deriving value right now. Like same could be pumped up on, right? Like I was like, why? But I realized just you have to realize where users are at and where they're getting value from certain products. And so, just like Brian said, start with the like Instagram approaches. Like they started with diehard photographers, which I think is great. You experiment, you get really good feedback, and then you have to cross this chasm. Every single consumer product will have to cross this chasm of crypto Twitter to a real retail. I don't like that word, but like just like user, like a normal user. So we think a lot about that. I spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Not that people in crypto aren't normal, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't make any claim like that. Yeah. But no, I love that idea of like, yes, there's a veritable chasm that has yet to be crossed, and I think we can all feel it. Like it's almost like we're right up against it. Where I feel like if you look at like DeFi TVL, it's like it's been mostly the same for like the past 3 years. Like it went down a little bit, and now it's back up a little bit, but it's like back up to the same level we were at 3 years ago. It's like mostly flat.
The one constant stables, like to me,
Yeah.
like stables go up because they fit where the value is. Like 2025's meta is you have to derive value to your customer. Like we've kicked the can long enough at this point. I've been in this industry a while now, and it's just at this point you have to show that you create value on behalf of your user, that you can't fake it anymore.
Yeah, and where do you guys think we're at? Like, I think, I forget what the name of it is, but there's like a technology adoption framework where it says there's
like the S curve.
Yeah, well, there's the first adopters, and then there's like the second wave, and then there's like a huge chasm, and then there's like the laggards. Do you think obviously we've reached the first adopters. Do you think, I think there's some debate, have we hit the second wave? Is the second wave yet to come, or are we working on the laggards? Like, where do you guys think we are?
Yeah, like I have theories, and a lot of crypto people will probably be disappointed because it's going to be less
bullish.
0 to 1. Like, I mean, not less bullish, just more like I think a lot of these back end rails get cryptofied first. Yeah. I think that's how it starts, and you're kind of already seeing that. Like, Fidelity will settle things on the blockchain, and the user won't even know. They'll still log in the same Fidelity. I'll log in my bank account. Like, and you're already seeing this with Stripe. They've managed to. They had like 100 countries. They're able to basically not bypass, but they're able to service because of stable coins now. And so, yeah, that's an interesting question for sure.
I think institutions are going to drive it for what it's worth, like the Visas and the MasterCards, the Robinhoods. Yeah. I mean, Coinbase is probably the biggest driver of all of this ultimately, right? Like, they just acquired Deribit, which means, options are coming soon, and many other things. So
huge.
And even, Coinbase drives the decentralized side too with Base. And so I think...
yeah, have you seen the DeFi mullet? Like you can take a BTC loan out.
Yeah, like Morpho, right?
And yeah, with Morpho, and you would never know you're using Morpho. Like to me, that's the future. Is like these protocols just become the equivalent of TCP, IP, SSL. Like the user doesn't care. They type this into the URL bar, and we just take care of it. We handle the security. We handle how to route, how to get there. Like, don't worry about any of that. Yeah. To me, the user has this beautiful user interface, and it's just way more efficient and like just more forgiving to the user than like the bank. Like to me, it just like kind of evens the odds, like because it's open protocols, and then we get the consumer push after that. But we still need to tokenize a lot of equities, I think, to really drive people over. Like at some point, you got to matriculate to a higher level of like capital value. I think like we have a lot of native capital, like ETH, Sol, like awesome, like wrap Bitcoin for sure. Like, but now I think we need to bring things from the real world on chain. And to do that, you need buy-in from the whole kind of ecosystem, like the whole financial ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I was going to ask you guys about when it comes to bringing consumers on chain is like, what are the right narratives? And I think you guys answered that, like things like 24/7 trading, like less fees. But now that we know the right narratives or things that can attract people and really bring value, what's the next step? Like, is that a distribution problem at that point? Like, how do you get that in front of people to onboard them in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, we think about distribution a lot. but I think it's like what's the value add, right? We're always thinking about
Hmm.
what are we providing the user that is important to them and valuable for them. I mean, I don't want to spend like too much time thinking about Glider as just like a solo example, but like within Glider, right, we try to not say things like trading or
Hmm.
like, and we prefer words like investing, right? Like this is now about managing your assets, everything on chain in one place, as
Yeah.
opposed to trading meme coins or flipping meme coins. Like yes, you can do that on Glider. Don't get me wrong, but the what will bring people into this world is things that they are familiar with, and this is important, right? If you are too far off in terms of familiarity, people will be like, "That is too fringe. Oh my
Yeah.
God, crypto is scary. I don't want to touch that." And so, how can we bring in concepts that they're familiar with? Like, for example, ETFs. ETFs is a thing that we talk about a lot for Glider. Oh, now you can create any ETF on your own, right? And that's something that's very familiar. And then we make it like a Web2 experience, and it's quite easy.
Yeah, there's like two like that's really great springboard. Like to me, there's two things there I want to talk about. One, like making parallels to what exists. That's really important in just like human interaction design in general. Like there's this concept of isometric design, and the really
Hmm.
early iPhones had things that look like the real world things because no one knew how to use a touch screen, for example. It's like your notes was literally like look like a notepad thing, and it was had leather and it looked like an actual note. And now we were able to move away from that and abstract that to just like 2D flat icons at some point. Like at some point we taught the user similar like how do we teach WEF and even like how to open up MetaMask, right? And so like giving the user some rope to hold on to similar examples they understand, but you also need to bring stuff that adds value that they wouldn't get in Web 2, right? And so to me, you have to look around at all these either financial primitives or other primitives. Like to me, financial has the best use case right now in front of us. I think there's tons of social, this and that, like that will come also. But to me, like Glider, for example, like from a first principles, like what if you could just create your own ETF on the fly? And that's really interesting. And like that's not allowed in the traditional finance system because of the overhead that comes along with all of that, right? Like there's just so many like uh, things that you have to take into account. But like imagine just clicking a bunch of assets and these are the ratios I want, and then just hit go. And like that to me is programmable money that you can't replicate. It's similar to like flash loans. I fell in love with flash loans really early on. I was like, this is awesome. This can't exist in the real world because it just is not designed that way. And so I think you have to actually look for things that are like TradFi plus, right? Like just like things that complement the existing system well because users understand them, but you build it where it's more transparent, it's more open, it's more uh, permissionless, right? Like that's really where I see a lot of the value in consumer products. So if you're a good product scout or you have good product eyes, you're looking for these things where it's like, how can I elevate what exists already in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I guess, since we're on the topic of Glider, can you break down like bullet point list what are, custom ETFs obviously huge, but what are like those key benefits that you're building and, bringing?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about automation, right? In terms of people having to think about gas, having to bridge between chains, having to manage all of their positions in a spreadsheet and 5 different wallets. It's a very, very cumbersome, complicated experience for anybody, right?
Yeah.
So the important part about Glider is we fix all of those things, and we also are non-custodial. So we don't have any ownership of these assets. You maintain full ownership of those assets, and that's the really, really important part that John just touched on, right? Like when you own your assets, you can lend them or stake them or participate in governance or lend them out as collateral and take out something against them. These are things that you can't do in traditional finance, and you can't do in a sort of compartmentalized way that we offer. There's levels to this as well, though, so I'm sure John can add some more to this too.
So like for me, just thinking about what I like to do in DeFi, because I'm a DeFi power user, and I think about how can I bring this, what I do, either via scripting, automation, whatever, to a regular user. How do you program something to say sell on a 2x? It's really hard right now. Like I don't think there's a really good way to do that. and especially on a portfolio level, like we have a lot of things moving around, and you have to track cost basis and things like that. And so the way I think about it is like protocols to me are like Unix modules.
Yeah.
You have Uniswap, you have Morpho, and these like are awesome Unix modules. And the beautiful thing about Unix is you can compose all these up and build some really cool experiences. And so to me, Glider takes more of the Apple approach of we're going to build up these modules, these Unix modules in an opinionated way. And so we have lend, borrow, this, that, but our vertical is very opinionated. And I think that's where you build great products you'll see this, the counterfactual here is like the products that go really wide lose all their users because they go so wide that it loses all value. It's just like you can do everything and anything. It's like, okay, but what does that mean? And then like I see a lot of that, like not competitors, but like people doing like you can automate anything in the on chain. It's like, okay, that's way too broad of a subject in my personal opinion. And so we said, okay, we're going to start with traders and people that want to use DeFi. And we're going to study how they use DeFi. We're going to improve their workflow. And we're going to take the Apple approach rather than the Unix like approach. Well, Apple's built on Unix, but so we take all these modules, these open source modules, and we build this really great user experience that's opinionated at the end of the day. And so that's what we did with Matcha early on, and it went really well. It's just like you have to bring taste and curation to the user because there's just too much out there right now. Sorry if that's long-winded. But yeah, that's how I think about building Glider, honestly.
Yeah, and let me give you some like key use cases here too, because sometimes I feel like John and I talk very, very big picture, and we forget like, oh, there's like a couple things that you can do really, really easily on Glider these days that make it just like huge value add for users. So one, we've talked about the custom ETFs, any token, any chain, easy. Things like that are one-off triggers. So I'll give you a few examples. A token reaches 2% mindshare on Kaido, buy that token. Elon Musk tweets about Doge, buy Doge. A top 10 holder of a token sells, always dump after they sell. Like any type of trigger rebalancing, these are key things that people want. When we do Hyperliquid or any other perp exchanges in the future, you can put on a basis trade all within Glider. We no longer have to have this world of like tokenized perps with spot positions. We can actually do it all in one place. And then again, you get all the benefits of actually owning both the spot and the perp side of the trade, as opposed to just the tokenized version where those token issuers are extracting value from you guys. So yeah, just to like nail down some like key use cases here, these are all things that you can do on Glider.
Absolutely. And I love the example that you gave with Apple, how first you have to parallelize and then you can start to iterate and introduce new things. It almost comes down to the human mind, how we approach things. Like you have to give humans the time to build the primitives in their head, and then they can approach new things like a basis trade. That's not going to work for like a leading, like you're going to put Facebook ads up and you're not going to get users to come on and like start doing basis trades on Hyperliquid. But
that wouldn't work on you?
Well, it would probably work on you.
Perps, though, I feel like are close enough where you could teach kind of perps, in my opinion. Like that is a close enough analog, and there's a high enough ROI to learning that, where I think people learn to slide that leverage slider and they'll really enjoy it. Like if they can grok 0 DTE options, like not that they do, but I mean, like if they're willing to trade them.
Well, also if you slap 100x on anything, and then they're willing to come on chain for that. But yeah, so I love that. I really love that example, and I think also a lot of the conversation has been around institutions are ultimately going to be the intermediary for a lot of it, and I think that will probably be the fastest adoption. That's just like a stepwise jump in on-chain liquidity and on-chain actions, even though the users have no clue, like even what they're doing. We'll be able to see it in our charts, and we'll be able to see it on the block explorer, but they'll have absolutely no idea. And I think that's kind of like a dream spot for like a Morpho, to be literally having Coinbase do their go-to market for them. Like, could you ask for literally a better opportunity? Like imagine having JP Morgan literally selling your loans through your protocol. Like, what an insane opportunity. Do you think there's an opportunity? Obviously you guys do, but I'm interested, like, what do you think the size of the opportunity is for these offshoots? Like you're going to have the institutions that go and they have, really like an insane advantage in terms of go to market for these financial products. And then there's going to be the companies that, maybe even like a glider, that they take a different route and they try to get users on board with their own sort of like onboarding mechanism. What do you think the size of the opportunity is there? Do you think it goes 100% to institutions? What is the split there?
So I think we're in M&A season. That's what this is right now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And to be honest with you, this happens at all levels of the stack, right? We have people who are integrating with Glider because they know that we can promote them and give them distribution.
Yeah.
Whereas we're working with a Coinbase or a Base because we know that they will give us distribution. And then
Yeah.
a Coinbase is working with a JP Morgan because they know JP Morgan will get them distribution. So it works itself up the stack that way.
I think there's an interesting note that you touched on, though. Like, how does, like, if you read between the lines, how does one compete with these larger organizations almost? Yeah. And to me, like, I think, honestly, like, being crypto native and being able to execute great products is going to be such an advantage going forward, especially in M&A season. A lot of these companies are going to wake up after a long winter and be like, oh, we're really behind. We need to buy versus build, because it takes a long time to build out a real, like product, protocol, you name it. And so I think we're going to see a lot of these, the Fidelity, BlackRocks of the world just start acquiring different crypto companies based on what they want to either service their users, service their back offices, whatever. And you can see that with Deribit. It's just like, it's easier to pay billions of dollars just to acquire Deribit than it is to build it out yourself. And so like, whether it's big or small scale, I think we're going to see a lot of that. But I actually think if you're a great crypto builder, you can compete with these large companies. It's, like, Phantom doing a great job, a lot of Xerox alumni, right? And so, like, to me, if you have taste and you understand where it's going, because there's so much context required, and it's still very early. And so, like, I still think if you're a tasteful craftsman in crypto, you have such an edge. And so now's, to me, I tell everyone that I interview and onboard, this is the golden time to be a product engineer in crypto. Yep. The primitives are there, the protocols are there. We have the apps and the session keys are starting to get built. Like the real useful primitives to the user are nascent, but they're starting to be here. And so it's so much fun. I'm having more fun now than I did in the last 5 years of building on the EVM and crypto in general.
I was actually having an interesting conversation about M&A, not both in the centralized way, but in the decentralized way as well. And so yes, a Coinbase can go and purchase a Deribit and Stripe can buy Bridge. But what we're really going to see is that a lot of these Fidelities and JP Morgans of the world are actually going to start to buy parts of networks. And they'll do this through the token. And why is that meaningful to them? Because that will give them both governance in the system, that's obvious, but that will provide them ways to both earn from the monetization of future rails that are replacing them over time. And so examples would be buy a bunch of Uniswap token or buy a bunch of DYDX token because you are getting the upside of how those protocols will expand. And then ultimately you're getting some part of control into them as well. And so that's really where the mantra is going.
Coinbase is already doing that, right? They do a lot of token deals. I saw Paradigm did a token deal. It was across, I want to say, I forgot, but you think about it, what Aave, if I check it, it's 23 billion TVL today, right? Across all their chains. To me, I want to own part of that network if I was a bank, because one, I want to hedge that risk anyways. And two, I actually think Aave has a wonderful model, and why not just become a part of that? And so that's a lot of the M0s, and you see a lot of they're trying to bring everyone together and kind of reach consensus. And I'm curious if it's going to be more organized, or it's just they're going to buy in, and then it's a bit like a Bitcoin reserve game theory where everyone starts buying in. So I don't know, but that's a good question. But yeah, I think networks are the ones that are valuable will actually be valuable, and then a lot of M&A in terms of products and builders, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a particularly interesting decision tree that we're at right now, is which directions do the big players head? Because one trend that's really taking off right now and has been probably for the last year or so is this roll up as a service model, where there's I don't know, maybe about 20 or so VC backed companies that are all going after this, and they're actually seeing product market fit. There's a lot of key players that are interested, and they're building with these their own roll up networks Do you think that institutions ultimately, I mean, perhaps it'll be a split and perhaps it'll be based on use case, but do you think they end up coming and joining us on some of these networks, or do you think they end up just spinning up their own and having like a KYC network or something like this?
I mean, this is the big problem in all of institutional crypto. So, like, I sat at Anchorage for 2.5 years, right? And the vast majority of institutions don't participate in DeFi because of KYC, right? Chainlink is doing a huge push with this to be the like middle layer between private chains that each of these institutions will spin up, and
Yeah.
then ETH as a settlement layer or whatever other settlement layer they want to use.
Aave has KYC pools too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, Uniswap. I think a lot of the smartest people in the room are doing this, and they're almost like V4 for Uniswap was in part like specifically engineered for this capability.
Same with the token.
Yeah.
The Solana token standard has hooks for KYC as well. Like if you squint, you can see where, to me, the distinction is going to be, will they KYC entrance into a chain, or will they KYC entrance on Ethereum into assets?
Yeah.
So like Coinbase, I'm watching Coinbase's attestation kind of arc really closely, because what they've done is they basically stamp you on chain. They said, if you're willing to, we'll say you're American, you're a certain age and a certain even like net worth tier, and like they do that in a private way, and then your address just becomes Coinbase vouches for you. And is that going to be enough to let you take out a loan with BlackRock or whomever, right? And like, or will you have to stop the world and join their L2 and then settle out and like, I'm curious where that mix ends up. Like my hope is we're on open permissionable blockchains and you just layer in KYC.
Yeah.
But there's also like payroll, for example. I used to work in fintech payroll stuff, and you need an undo button. And like I'm curious how like there's no question, like you cannot do immutable payroll. I'm sorry, like anyone that even proposed that is just wrong. And so like they've never had a payroll administrator crying to them Thursday night saying my payroll for tomorrow is messed up, and if I don't get this right, like people lose their homes and their mortgages, like that like there's so many mistakes in the real world of finance. And so like I try to map that together with real world experiences. I'm like, okay, we need an undo button. Does that have to be a layer 3? Is that a layer 2 that's permissioned? Not that you can roll back, but apply like I'm curious how that all ends up. Sorry, that's like a bit ranty, but I'm just like, all these things matter to getting this to the user at the end of the day.
It's not just the KYC part too, right? It's the privacy. And I think that's where retail doesn't necessarily care too much about the privacy side. Like people could care less, but the institutions seem to really, really want. Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? If all of your trades were public, like that just wouldn't do. And so there's a lot of people working on in this space. Like we're
Aztec Networks had a cool, if you haven't seen that lately.
A whole bunch of people working on this, right? Like we're part of CSX right now, which is like a crypto accelerator with A16Z, and there's a company called Inco in there that's doing the privacy layer for crypto. And so there's a lot of cool stuff coming out in this, and then a whole bunch of stuff with ZK. That's a whole conversation on its own to solve some of these problems.
Vitalik's, risk proposal, like to me, like all of this is kind of like there's this organic convergence, I think, that's going to happen at some point with regard to privacy. But even Solana had some kind of privacy forward token initiatives, and it like covers like part of it, but not fully. Like it's being worked on.
Absolutely, and I think the funny part is that this transition is happening very gradually, and it's very non-obvious to like the DeFi user today that this stuff is happening. But like you said, like if you can squint, you can see that like Layer 0 has this DVN approach where you can like add KYC on the hop level between chains and all this stuff. Like it's stuff that like initially when I was like auditing some of the Layer 0 V2 stuff, I was like, why? It's so complicated. Why did they do this? But it starts to make sense when you start to think about, oh, KYC is going to be useful in other AML checks and stuff like that, arbitrarily programming in what you need.
Yeah, and like if you're a protocol and you did the liquidity mining, your user base is saturated. Like to me, the next thing you turn to is institutions, and then they'll tell you exactly what they need. And I'm sure the list involves KYC and AML. Like that's the top things of any kind of bank charter regulated like entity in general. And so it makes sense to me, like, like the crypto, hacker kind of thing. Like it's interesting to see the KYC kind of get built in, but like, I think we can do it in such a way where you still preserve that, that agency on chain.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Yeah, I love the way in which things are seeming to be built up, because there's almost like these economic zones, which are like, this is a zone in which you can use, like a JP Morgan or like a Vanguard. But then if I'm on chain and I have self custody of all this stuff still, I can go in and out of that zone as long as, I've been KYC'd. But if I want to go outside of that zone and use some like dark magic DeFi protocol that was just launched by some anons, I can still do that, and I could take my funds and do that. So I think net for DeFi users, it will not take away anything. It will just add the optionality. If you want to go into that institutional zone and you want to interact with the capital they have there and the opportunities, then it's right there. So I think it's overall a good thing.
There's always going to be people that opt out of that as well. So like to me, like there's always going to be like the permission stables, and then like the DAIs of the world. Like single collateral DAI was like a beautiful innovation to me, like super decentralized. And so like to me, it's like RuneScape. You can go out in the forest and really PvP if you want, turn on PvP mode and like play, but like, and then you have your home base where you're safe. Like to me, like that, who knows? That might be something like that.
I was just about to bring up gaming, because this is where gaming also comes into things, right? Where you've got these siloed ecosystems like a Call of Duty or a Grand Theft Auto, right? Where maybe they don't necessarily want like crypto functionality into it, but you will have these indie game developers and other developers who want to be part of this ecosystem where people can like trade permissionlessly between all of these systems. So yeah, gaming is a good parallel here as well.
Yeah, the interop question for sure.
What do you think is holding us back at this point? Do you think it's just all this stuff is going to get solved eventually and all come together? Like what's the main bottleneck at this point?
People don't realize that's the power of this. That's the thing, right? Like you're not thinking like, let's take the gaming example again. You're not thinking like, oh, actually I can sell my Fortnite skin for X dollars in crypto and then go buy something on Grand Theft Auto. Like that's a huge unlock. So I think it's going to come with some education, but like what's also blocking us is, well, I mean, that's just the way people think. And then we've got some like infrastructure that's also specifically built around that, right? So you go to an app and your wallet is only for that app.
Right.
Like I think that's great now. It's a very Web2 like experience. But there are wallet providers out there and all of like the Chrome extensions, like the MetaMasks and the Phantoms, right, where you can move seamlessly and permissionlessly between the apps. So it's going to take some user mindset changing and understanding of like why this is so cool. And I think we're just starting to see the bits and pieces of that. I think it'll actually very much look like an app store. So Coinbase will push this, the institutional custodians like the Anchorages and the Fireblocks will push this. And then you realize that like, okay, like my wallet is the iPhone, but I have all of these apps that I can use on my iPhone, and there are permissions for them, and there are things like that you sort of get the big picture of like, this is more than just like this one-off thing that I'm using. It's
it's an experience, an integrated experience. I think that's what Apple has done so well, is the integrated experience. And I love the point that you just made, where it's like you can go from Grand Theft Auto to XYZ other game and have a continuity of experience. And even, I mean, in like you talk about an app store, you don't really have an integrated experience between individual apps. But if you also, now you have a DeFi app store where you get this app and then you can see, oh, I can literally affect a balance here that affects something in this app. And now it's an integrated experience across the entire software stack and not just the hardware. And I think we'll see how Apple sees that as an opportunity. But I think in general, that's an opportunity for DeFi builders.
So it also won't even matter. I think this is where ZK actually comes in, and this is where things get cool. It's that like, I'll give you a pretty concrete example here. So let's say you're a Coinbase user and you've traded $1 million in volume. Great. I might value that information for Glider because I think you're a high valuable customer.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't need to go to Coinbase and say, hey, like, give me all of this, like give me a partnership, let's integrate. No, we get into this world now where it's like, no, just ZK approve, a test that you actually have done it, right? And then suddenly you have that on Glider. And now we get into this world of one-side partnerships everywhere, which is really cool.
There's going to be this wave. If I get a couple of predictions, but like one prediction is a vampire tax of Web2 companies. I think ZK is going to enable so much there. Like Strava, imagine log in with Strava like via ZK. So you don't have to ask Strava for permission. And suddenly you build a better running app, import all your data. So everything comes with you. You don't have to reset, right? Same with Robinhood, just like log in. We get all of your preferences, this, that, your history, how good of a trader you are, like, and then we build a better Robinhood on top of that. And so like, and then you do an airdrop to reward your use. Like to me, that's how we steal users, not steal, but like grow the pie, right? From Web 2 is like, you give them free money, like ownership in this thing, and then they participate and they see, wow, that's really cool. I wish I could have owned a piece of Uber back in San Francisco 10 years ago. Like I would have loved to be a part of that, like, and so, like it'd be great to be an equity holder in some of these things.
I mean, it's the ownership of everything, right? Like, I mean, this is not to bring up A16Z again, but here, like, A16Z's mantra here that Chris Dixon wrote is read, write, own. And now we're in the era of like you being able to actually own parts of these networks over time.
There's one thing you said earlier was just like, what's the impetus to this? Like, and one meta comment I have is I actually think this is somewhat like inevitable, not like Thanos, but like I think money wants to be freed. Like just like information wanted to be freed on the internet, the printing press, you name it. Like there's this certain like energy that money has that's like, let me loose. I'm more useful. Just open, right? And so like I think it just takes a long time because finance comes with a ton of baggage. It affects every facet of your life, your community's life, your government's life, like the world's life. And so I think it's just it's messier, right? Like once you financialize anything, it becomes way different. Like like playing World of Warcraft, but you had to, like if it became like super financialized, it just wouldn't be fun. Like I saw dollar signs everywhere. I'd be like, okay, what are we doing? Like to me, like you got to be very careful when you financialize things, and you have to think about who are the stakeholders, how you affect it. Like, but I think money generally just fundamentally wants to be freed, just the way information was during the whole, information shift, right?
Absolutely. And when you unlock interoperability like this, and it's so frictionless, the velocity of money within these applications just goes through the roof.
You're seeing that with Stripe. Stripe has so much data on their stablecoin, and they're like, we've never seen adoption this fast.
Exactly.
And like that should tell you a lot, right? Like the demand for money is real, and it wants to be higher velocity. It just wants to be programmable. It wants more feature set in it, and like to me, like that's why I joined crypto, is just the magic of programming money, like fundamentally.
100%. And I think a lot of it is the friction of onboarding, like you say. Like if you have all this information already out there and it's permissionless to access, first of all, I mean, it's awesome that you can go and target people and literally give them in-app, like, oh, you're this amount of volume on Coinbase, so you have access to, whatever tier XYZ, whatever you want to do, whatever any application wants to do. And like even the friction of partnerships and business relationships gets sort of entirely thrown away and is no longer a thing. Like all of these applications can build these use cases that go much deeper with the user experience in terms of like customizability and what you could even like hope to be able to accomplish before. I mean, there are entire multi-billion-dollar applications that solve the customizability problem. Like, I don't know, you think of like a MailChimp or like a HubSpot or a Klaviyo. They store all of this user information and they have like their own event logs of like, oh, they did this action, or, this is their LTV. And then what those applications do is they go and they have like predictive models and say like, oh, well, this user is likely to purchase this thing again this time. But that's not open and it's not permissionless. When you take all that data and you put it on chain, all of a sudden everybody has access to that. And I mean, we can only imagine what will happen, how fast new solutions will be able to be made, and like we can only imagine what will come from that. But with that being said, how do we take that power and how do we create an experience? I want to be able to touch on like what is the process of designing the UX around all of this power, this immense power that we have in DeFi. There's so much you could do, and you guys are offering, kind of like this Lego like build strategies and stuff like this. How do you present that to the user? Because I think that's really the root of what makes a good application in DeFi is like, how do we present it in a digestible way that's approachable? So like, what's the process for that?
A lot of beta testing. I mean, that's upfront. There's a lot of beta testing, and it's making it easier and easier and easier to one, create these portfolios and really do anything in Glider. And then part of this as well is thinking about and anticipating what the user is going to be thinking about when something occurs. And so World actually does a really good job of this. So like when you go and scan your eyeballs, after that process is done, they like do this little animation and they say, now your data is being magically erased, right? Because the question that you think about when you're using this is like, oh my God, where is my eyeball retina data going? And so they've anticipated that and they've made it this magical experience where you're actually like, you're entertained by it, right?
Yeah.
And so we try to do similar things on Glider. Uniswap does this as well now, where you can say like, why do you have to sign this? This is why I'm signing this. What is happening now when I swap it? Doing small animations to show like give a sense of actually what's happening behind the scenes. I think that's what people like. So yeah, I mean, two things that we really focus on: just make DeFi as simple as possible, and then anticipate what users are going to either fear or have questions about.
I'd probably add on like solve real problems. Like, and that's like assumed because we talk about it all the time, Brian and I. But like, what are they trying to do on chain? Why is it hard for them right now? What would make it easier? And like to me, quick aside, but like to me, I feel like the local maximum of crypto UX hasn't really elevated in a long time. Like I remember building some of the initial swap UIs out. It was like input, output, swap button. And I feel like we haven't emerged from that local maximum in a while, right? And so to me, like the next kind of local max, or not low, like there's, the next kind of tier is automating things that people do regularly. Because we already have the swaps, we got that down. We're good there. Like we're super good there. We even got some cross-chain stuff.
We don't need more swapping nowadays.
Yeah. So to me, like, now it's about convenience. It's about solving the things that they do, the minutia. Like, I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. to sell on my 2x. It should be automatic. Like that's table stakes for programmable money. Like if we can't do that, what are we doing here? And so to me, it's thinking in bigger terms of just a token. It's a single token. Now you think in terms of baskets. You think in terms of portfolios, because that's how like users do think. They think like, all right, I'm holding these things. How do I care for them? And so that's, I think, where the meta is headed: automation, convenience, and deriving value. Like, find something that a user's doing on chain every single day and automate it, and you could probably build a product around it. And like, take that and study your users just relentlessly. We have so many user tests. Like, we get everyone from like extremely sophisticated whales to people that didn't know the difference between mainnet ETH and base ETH, and like that's like, and we're trying to figure out, okay, where is that demographic overlap? What problems are worth solving? Which ones are valuable to solve? Because a lot of some problems aren't valuable to solve. You can get nerd sniped really easily. So yeah, just like being methodical. But that goes into any like kind of product. I feel like just like good product builders are extremely like relentlessly methodical on how they build and iterate.
It should be so intuitive, right?
Yeah.
The user should be able to sit there. They should be able to, and we watch them, right? When we do these beta tests, we just say, here, go. We don't give them any context. And then we watch and see, what do they do? Where do they get stuck? Like, being able to, again, to predict what they're going to be doing next and sort of guide them in a like, here's the next button you need to click, then do this, then do this. And don't even do that in app. Like,
the onboarding flows.
You've all been through tutorials that are like that, right? Where it's like, then you click this next, and then you have to watch a 30-second video about why you have to do this. And like, it's... Apple would never do that, right? So slowly nudging the user naturally through a product. And also
removing gas.
Another thing we think about too is like, I know there's so many things to say on this. It's like, how do you pace a product for somebody? In games,
Yeah.
some do this really well, right? You don't go into a game and you're like, oh my God, I've got to deal with gems and coins and XP and mana and like lives, right? Like that's just too complicated to start out. And so, we think about like, what are the first couple things that you usually think about or like know how to do, use, and then open up the world bigger and bigger and bigger to them as they master that over time. And these are things that we're still trying to build and improve at Glider. And I think every app should be doing this.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get the real
Games are the reference now.
Yeah.
Truly, like I look up UIs in games regularly as references because that's actually where it's headed. We were just having a talk about inventory slots and what that means, like how to think of like. To me, games do this, like a lot of games you join, they're like, look up and down. Okay, I know like which axis is which, and then move forward and strafe and crouch, and like you go past the beginner section, they give you a tool to use. Like to me, that onboarding is so key because that's where the churn happens. Once you make a user feel stupid, they leave. It's just like, that was cool, but I guess DeFi is not here yet. And then they come back maybe a year or two later, if ever. And so like you get one shot with consumer products generally. Like you ever download an app and you're like, I guess like I'm too dumb for this, and I just delete it from my phone. And like some of these apps are horrible and I just never use them again. But I'm sure there's value in there and the developers are smarter and all that. And so like, yeah, it's like to me, like we're at the point where we can really get the UX streamlined now. And like I wouldn't have said that 3 years ago, but like now's an actual point where it's like I think we can actually get this into a really, really slick experience.
Yeah, no, I think to go back to what you're saying about how there's so many actions that users are just making in DeFi that just don't even need to exist right now. I think, like you said, like DeFi is basically, it's not programmable money for the vast majority of people who use it today. It's more like manual money, and we need the applications to actually make it feel like programmable money. And I think the experience, like you said, it's about how do we start off stripping away all the things that you could do, but really we don't need to because it's not that valuable, and only having like, this is the only thing that we need to do. And then you actually have a hope of making a UI that's so simple, so easy to pick up that somebody who's like drunk and just had like 3 Big Macs can like swap or do whatever they need to do.
It's true. Just like you can shoot off a parlay.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like on DraftKings, like you should be able to do that at 3 in the morning. Like it's just very true. Like honestly, like to me, and this is a good example, is I think the cutting edge mobile apps now for crypto are just making it so you auto yield. Like to me, that was that should be table stakes. And like that's like the new feature everyone's advertising. And I think that's now table stakes. And so my dollars should be yielding something if I don't. And Blast made that really popular initially, and then now BlackRock has like an auto compounding stable. Like you can see how this starts growing, and the mobile apps are like, we just put you in compound or Aave anytime you have idle asset. Like to me, that's something that should have been done before, but that's where we're getting into this programmable money, like things that work for you rather than the other way around. And so to me, like you're going to see more of that. And then gliders, to me, like we realized that early on, and we're like, oh, okay, these mobile apps can play around with yield. We'll meet you over here where everything's truly like, it's an opinionated, sophisticated way to think about your assets instead. And like, but you can see how it's curving upwards. Like to me, that trading and then yield, and then like you'll start to see it. And then I think there'll be a natural convergence on automation products that work for the user.
And by the way, we're actually talking to a number of these mobile applications who want to provide the glider functionality behind the scenes. So I know we spend a lot of time talking about like our B2C application, which is incredible and so sleek, but there are a lot of integrators who are like, wait, I can just use what you've built, embed it into my front end. It could be a mobile app, it could be Telegram, it could be X, it could be your own, website, and just monetize. And we're like, yeah, like go for it. And so that's actually where we see a lot of growth here potential as well. And so a number of those will be publicly announced soon, and hoping we can have more of those in the future.
What does that look like technically? Do you guys just have an API that you expose to them?
Yes. So we dog food. This is something I learned really well at ZeroX.
Yeah.
So they built a ZeroX API, which was like a public API to do DEX aggregation, right? And eventually everyone integrated it. Now you have to use a DEX aggregator to get a good price, right? Like in my opinion. And so we built out Xerox API and Matcha consumed it. And we dog fooded this thing. And we wouldn't have been able to build a good Xerox API without a consumer. And we wouldn't have been able to build a consumer product without a good platform API. And so we're taking the same approach here of we built out a platform API for Glider. Mm-hmm. We use it. We offer it to everybody else. And one day, like the user experience in these mobile apps will you integrate Glider like a DEX aggregator, and now the app gets to offer you up. They can build their own ETFs. They can build their own things, baskets, or even like programmable money in general. Just like buy trending tokens and sell it at 2x. Like you could literally do that if you want. And so this just allows wallets to level up from we have swapping and yield. Like to me that's cool, but like to me, I want my money to work for me, and so we offer this. Like to me, I'm so excited when people integrate, because to me it's a cool. Like to me, this is where everything's headed, and then on top of that, it's a great experience for the user, and so we're happy to share this with everybody.
And we make it really easy too, right? Like what would have taken you months to do, and maybe isn't your core focus either, could now take you like a week. You literally just like if you're using like a privy or a turnkey, it's like. It's so straightforward to do.
If you go to docs.glider.fi, there's a quick start, and it's only like 4 or 5 steps, and you're good to go. And like that's where we want to make it. Is it's both easy for the integrator and the DevX, and then the user benefits as well. Like everyone, it's all about incentive alignment in crypto. And so like to me, when everyone's winning, it's just like that's what it's all about.
And then bring in your own signals too, right? Like weather app says like if it's sunny today I'm buying Bitcoin, and that's the trigger all the time. And then like
we got a full moon coming, so you got to watch out.
Sell Solana on the full moon.
I love this play in general. Not that this is entirely like an infrastructure play, but I love the infrastructure play because B2C especially is just so hard to, it almost feels like it's just a small percentage chance that you hit the right messaging, hit the right distribution channel for a really outsized outcome. But if you have more of that infrastructural, like, hey, we're offering the rails for people to do this, and now you've got, dozens of applications trying for that B2C. And for you guys, that could be, arbitrary different applications. It doesn't have to be like very simple things like swaps or anything like that. It could be arbitrary automations. So, I mean, I love that. It just increases the surface area that you guys have to hit a piece of that, like, adoption that will happen. Like, once somebody does get the right acquisition channel and they've got the right messaging and they have the right, and the numbers make sense for the acquisition model, and it doesn't cost like $4,000 to acquire a new user, and they're actually retaining them, that's when things get really exciting. And I think it's generally, I mean, I love what you guys have done with Matcha and ZeroX and taking that model here. I think it's a no-brainer play. So very excited to see what kind of applications start using it. Are there any you can share that are maybe like interesting use cases, or is it all very closed door right now?
I'll tell you, it's just there's some mobile apps, there's some Telegram bots, and we're quite connected to any number of wallets out there as well.
And it's exciting because they're using it in ways I didn't expect. And like, to me, when you find developers doing things that you're like, oh, I didn't like, to me, that's cool. Like emergent behaviors are always indicative of like, oh, there's something here potentially.
And very cross ecosystem as well. So we're talking to people in Bitcoin, we're talking to people in Solana, any number of L2s. So it's really all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, the product feedback that you've got to get from exposing the API, like first of all, by exposing your own UI, but then multiply that by a factor of like 10 or 20 by having all these other partner protocols. And they're like, oh, can you do this with the API? And they're like, yeah, I never even thought, why do you want to do that? Because we're doing this on the front end. And then, light bulb goes off. So that's very exciting. And I think a lot of really big companies, the big play is always to have some kind of like an app store, right? So, I mean, obviously starting with Apple, but, even like marketing automation tools, Shopify, the app store in Shopify, Klaviyo has, I don't know if they've gone totally live with their app store, but like that's a huge play. Have you guys thought at all about some kind of an offering where it's like somebody's built this app on top of the API that does this? Is that anything you guys have thought of?
I mean, I can speak for on the engineering side. Like to me, we're building in a way where you can build your own blocks inside the app, and so like to me, that's how I want to kind of express an app store. I'm not in a hurry to build an app store out. It can be a bit of a boondoggle in my experience, and then like you have to think about like app stores work really well for like super top of funnel right next to the user. And so like I think World App Store is more apt than like a Glider app store. I'm not going to count it out, but just like you have to think about what the surface areas are there.
I would think of it more as like a, not so much an app store, but just like a list of people who use us, right? Like, because like think about like we're kind of getting into like the infra space a bit, right? Yes, we sit on top of a bunch of other infra, but like a zero dev, for example, wouldn't have an app store that's necessarily, I mean, I guess they're more fundamental infra, so maybe they would be like, these are all the apps using us. But for us, I don't think there's enough differentiation yet in how they'd be using the API that it would make sense to be like, here's a flashlight app, and then here's a weather app, and here's a notes app, right? Like they'd all be kind of similar. And now that'll change over time, but and different use cases. But yeah, not something we've spent a lot of time thinking about yet, but not something we're counting out.
And what do you guys see as like the long term? Like, what's the ultimate end product? What is the ultimate experience you guys are building towards?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole and this is a whole conversation on itself, but there's a whole decentralized path for Glider. And how does this become something that is quite centralized in what we've built to something that anybody can build into, something that anybody can own, something that anybody can be a part of and operate and be a, be a liquidity provider, be a person who is trading. Like
there's a lot of cool networks here that are emergent and we're starting to study, and we're finding who are the actors in this thing, this whole, like, because the app is just one. It's like, to me, it's like a big iceberg, and like the app is just a piece of this. And so the underlying Glider infrastructure is like, there's a lot going on. And so to me, it looks like a network, and we're sussing out where the value is and where it makes sense to allow people to be not relayers, but like operators of this network. Super excited to decentralize it more in general, but
that's exciting, guys. Well, I mean, regardless of the direction you guys end up taking, and I mean, of course, there'll be a lot of iteration along the way. I think you guys are starting from like extremely solid fundamentals. I mean, clearly you guys see exactly where DeFi is at today, and I think exactly where it's going and what DeFi users need. So you're in an exciting spot, and I'm looking forward to seeing, first of all, what kind of features you guys are exposing in your UI, but also, I mean, pretty exciting to see who's leveraging this and like what kind of use cases come out of it. It sounds like there's a handful of them. But I mean, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much for hopping on and taking the time. I think we covered everything from like the beginnings of DeFi, how you guys got into, I mean, what it looks like in an institutional future. So, I mean, really just want to thank you guys for hopping on and discussing.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, if you want to check out Glider too, you can follow us on X at glider_fi, and our website is glider.fi, and we've got all the usual channels, Discord, Telegram, and we're hiring as well. So if you're an engineer who is looking for a backend or staff level founding engineer role, we have those listed on our website as well.
Absolutely, and we'll have all those links listed down below for anybody listening. And yeah, go down below, check out glider.fi.